Welcome to Saturday Morning Inspection. I'm Nick, and this is our daily NFL show. The NFL's golden boy himself attacks the league. This is a really big story, not getting a lot of publicity. We'll break that down and why it's a huge deal, plus so much more news across the NFL to sink our teeth into today. Hopefully you guys had a fantastic weekend and are ready for a really good Monday. But first, let's get things going with how we do it every single day on this show, and that's with a little stat of the day, a little palate cleanser, if you will. Let's pull up this graphic here, courtesy of Nutshell Sports. This is defensive interceptions above expectations. Kind of an interesting statistic. Basically what they try and figure out, and it's a little bit flawed, but they try and look at the interceptions the team had in 2025 and factor in historical patterns going back to 2023 based on turnover-worthy throws and dropped interceptions and things like that. Just a way to see which teams got more or less interceptions than expected. And there are two teams that really jump out in terms of having a significantly more picks than expected, and one team with significantly fewer. When it comes to the Jets having significantly fewer, that's not really a huge surprise considering the Jets were a historically bad team intercepting passes in 2025. But if you focus at the top there, I want to talk about the Bears and the Chargers, both with more than 6 interceptions above expectation. Now, turnovers are a great indication of how many games you're going to win. High turnover margin directly correlates to high winning percentage, and the Bears and the Chargers relied a lot on turnovers, specifically interceptions, to win the football games they did in 2025. But this is not a me picking on the Bears or me picking on the Chargers. This is praise for Chicago and Los Angeles, because what do you guys notice about those two franchises this offseason? Massive changes. Chargers made big moves, big investments. Some of them got a lot of headlines, hiring Mike McDaniel, for example. Some of them a little bit more quiet, introducing Tyler Biadasz as center. Some other moves they made on defense, not overspending for Odafe Oweh. Good offseason for the Chargers. The Bears even more aggressive in their wholesale personnel changes. No coaching changes except for Declan Doyle leaving to go to the Baltimore Ravens, but entire defensive overhaul, changing their safeties, drafting new players, letting some corners walk in free agency, changing out their linebacker. Out goes Edmonds, in goes Devin Bush. More moves as well across the board for the Chicago Bears. And this is where I give the Chargers and the Bears a ton of credit. They understood correctly that a lot of what they did last season was not sustainable. You can't keep up that pattern forever. Now, I understand some Bears fans may say, yeah, Al Harris is the secondaries coach in Chicago. His teams always get a lot of interceptions. That's very true. And maybe they do maintain an above average interception rate. But even if that's the case over the course of a long season, the NFL postseason comes down to one outcome, one game. And these interceptions above expectations, that can swing wildly the other way, right? Sometimes it's just not your day. And in the NFL, if it's not your day, you better have more than one way to win. And if you're relying too much on takeaways, it's hard to win a championship going down that path. And Al Harris himself has run into that issue throughout his coaching career. So again, I commend Chicago and Los Angeles for understanding that a big portion, not the majority, and certainly not all of their success in 2025 was based on interceptions above expectation and takeaways above expectation if you focus on the Bears. And I commend them for making big changes to their roster, understanding what they did in 25, while impressive, was not sustainable to building a championship caliber football team. You can't have an outlier year and just expect that to happen forever. The Bears and the Chargers, with great leadership, great coaches, good GMs, good organizations, understood that, and they made great improvements this offseason. All right, let's talk about what I think is the big news of the day, certainly over the weekend, in my opinion. Didn't get a lot of publicity, but I think it's really important. This is from Pro Football Talk. Raiders minority owner Tom Brady, the golden boy of the National Football League himself. He is a part owner. He is some sort of fashion icon now, I guess. He does stuff for Gucci. He is obviously the greatest quarterback of all time. He is very, very wealthy and very, very, very famous. So obviously by the way, he is the lead color commentator for Fox Sports. So again, he is basically the face of the NFL. And obviously, he's a minority owner of the Raiders, one of the more historical and marquee franchises in the history of the NFL. It's not like he's a minority owner of, not to pick on a team here, but like Jacksonville or something like that. But anyway, here's what he had to say. Raiders minority owner Tom Brady has a strong anti-management pro-player viewpoint when it comes to the system of finding players for on-field infractions, and the NFLPA should be taking notes. All right, at face level, it doesn't sound like a whole lot, right? Raiders owner says, I don't like the way players are getting fined. But here's the thing. Owners never attack the NFL. They don't. Never happens. One of the reasons why the NFL ownership, whether they be the minority owners or the principals, are so powerful is because they stick together so well. When Robert Kraft tried to go outside the norm, when Tom Brady himself was going through the Deflategate stuff and all the other issues the Patriots had, he got roundly defeated because the rest of the owners closed ranks. Jerry Jones has run into similar problems as well, and Kraft and Jerry Jones are the two most powerful owners in the NFL by far. Jerry Jones is the most, Robert Kraft is a close second. But the moment those two guys try to step out of the lane a little bit and go after the NFL, the other owners closed ranks. The NFL league office closed ranks, and they got shut down. They got beat. This doesn't happen. Owners don't attack other owners. It took Jerry Jones, the wildcat maverick of all time, to do this kind of things. And again, Jerry Jones is a very polarizing figure. Brady, not so much. Brady's the face of the NFL. You turn on football on Sundays, you're going to see Tom Brady. You just are. You turn on social media the other 6 days of the week, you're going to see Tom Brady. You follow the Raiders, you're going to see Tom Brady. You watch highlights, you open up the rule book, you go to the Hall of Fame, you're going to see Tom Brady. You talk to quarterbacks, they're going to talk about Tom Brady as the standard. He is, I know he's still obviously not playing, but he is the face of the National Football League. He is involved in everything. He is in some ways even more powerful than a John Madden figure. Because as great of a personality and as loved as John Madden wasn't an owner. He didn't have that kind of control actually of a team. Brady, while a minority owner, it's not like he has voting control. He has a lot of power in the Raiders organization, a lot of influence, certainly. And so for him to go after management, phrased as an anti-management, what that really means is anti-owner and anti-NFL specifically, because the NFL is what levies the fines. The NFL is what manages these things. This is very interesting because if we start to see Brady and other minority owners, especially very powerful, influential ones, come out against the NFL, this could lead to some very very drastic changes. One of the big ones that's been discussed a lot because of the World Cup going on is grass fields. Now, I've talked about this numerous times, how the only way the NFL owners will ever agree to grass fields is if the players agree to an 18th game. And I think my prediction was that'll eventually happen. But I kind of wonder, maybe not, because if you have enough of powerful voices like Brady that are willing to buck the trend, and remember, Brady doesn't need to be an NFL owner. The other 32 NFL owners and the minority owners involved, they need to be owners. It's who they are as people. Brady, if you take away him being a Raiders minority owner, is the number one color commentator on Fox Sports and the greatest quarterback of all time, right? And extremely, extremely wealthy and extremely, extremely famous, okay, right? So you take away him being an owner, he's still fine. He doesn't need to be an owner, and that gives him a lot of power. And I think if Brady is successful here, I think this could be the tip of the spear of how the NFL, as Pro Football Talk notes here, could kind of work their way into some negotiations here. And maybe Brady can be the guy to enact real change. And I know it's early, and I know it's obviously very premature to say that Tom Brady could lead this charge. But if there's one guy that could do it, that could actually change how the NFL operates and so many of the negative things the NFL does, it is Tom Brady. And I know a lot of people out there don't like Brady. But let me ask you this. Who is more powerful? The only guy who's even remotely close in my lifetime would be Madden. And Madden, it wasn't really his deal. It wasn't something he cared about that much. Brady does. Brady does. And to be fair to John Madden, the NFL wasn't doing as many stupid stuff when he was obviously very active as a color commentator than they are doing now. To be fair to Madden, it's not like there was less to complain about back then. Nowadays, there's a lot more issues with what the NFL is doing. So this is something to keep an eye on, because if Brady can break the NFL ownership in terms of their ability to close ranks, and as an owner himself, he can break through, that will be the tip of the spear the NFL Players Association and maybe even fans can leverage these changes. Something to keep an eye on here. This is a bigger story than people let on. All right, let's talk about this from around the NFL. Steelers Mike McCarthy's Bucky Brooks' long shot pick for Coach of the Year. I agree with this. Mike McCarthy is one of the great win maximizers in the National Football League. A win maximizer is someone who pulls the maximum amount of wins possible out of a team. And that can be good and that can be bad. So, for example, Mike McCarthy had 3 straight 12-win seasons for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, in 2021, they went 12-5. In 2022, they went 12-5. In 2023, they went 12-5. In 21, a little bit of a mirage. 23, definitely a mirage. Both of those teams were probably 10, 11 win teams that got to 12 wins. 22, they were actually good. That's probably fair to say. But again, he got 3 straight 12-win seasons. In 2020 in Dallas, that team was terrible, god awful. They were 3-9 at one point. They were getting beat by 30, 40 points to team like they lost to Washington twice. I remember that year, and Washington finished with a losing record by like 30 points. They were getting smoked by terrible teams, but they went 6-10 before it was all said and done. How'd that happen? In 2024, you guys remember that Cowboys team? I mean, everyone was killing them for a while there. I think they, like 5 or 6 straight games, they were down by like 20 points in the second half. They were getting obliterated. They finished 7-10. Right, they won 7 games. How does that happen? Because that's what Mike McCarthy does, man. That he has this innate ability to pull the max amount of wins possible out of a roster. Now, postseason success is a different story, and this is why the Packers eventually turned away, because they realized, listen, we're winning a lot of games, but we're not playing up to championship caliber. So this is going to be the question for McCarthy. Now, he's done a great job in Pittsburgh fixing what I think was their biggest problem. We did a story about this a few days ago, talking about the fact that what McCarthy has done with his quarterback school is created a quarterback development process in Pittsburgh, which is something they failed at. The Steelers haven't failed at drafting quarterbacks. They failed at developing them. And Mike McCarthy has done a good job so far implementing a process to allow the Steelers to finally develop quarterbacks. So I think that's good. But if you're talking about just impact on the field, wins, losses, I think the Steelers could be pretty good. And again, if you look at that division, the Bengals are very good. But I have questions about the coaching staff. They had a great offseason. Bengals questions about the coaching staff. And you look at the Ravens, new head coach, new offensive coordinator, team finished with a losing record last year. We don't know what's going to happen there, and the Browns are still the Browns. There's a world where Mike McCarthy pulls 11 wins and the Steelers win the AFC North next year, or maybe even 12 wins and win the AFC North. You tell me he doesn't win Coach of the Year in that situation? It's a good story. Rodgers' last hurrah. I could see it happening. And again, this is what Mike McCarthy is really good at. He is a phenomenal win maximizer. And I think he's got a great chance to do that, especially in an AFC, which, as I've talked about a lot, isn't very top-heavy. NFC, super top-heavy. Rams and Seahawks are head and shoulders above the pack. The AFC, and I like 4 teams. I've been very clear about this. I like the Chargers, the Texans. I like the Chiefs. And, I like the Bengals have moved into there. But the Bengals do have coaching issues, if we're being totally honest. Questions about their defensive coordinator and Zach Taylor, right? We don't know exactly how that's going to shake out. So, again, if you look at the AFC, those 4 teams, while the top teams in my mind, they're not world beaters right now by any means in terms of clear juggernauts. So there's a path forward for the Steelers for them to be a really good team this year. And Mike McCarthy being coach of the year because of that is a very real possibility. All right, let's talk about this here. So ESPN had a pretty good piece talking about different new coordinators around the National Football League and big questions for them. And they talked about reigning Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks and their new offensive coordinator, Brian Fleury. And this is what they had to say when it comes to the Seahawks rely on. Who can they rely on behind Jackson Smith and Jigba? And the report goes, in 3 years as a head coach of the Seahawks, Mike Macdonald has made 3 offensive coordinator hires. The first was Grubb, who didn't work. Then Clint Kubiak, who did work. And Kubiak's offense was a revelation for wide receiver Smith and Jigba, who produced a stunning 44% of the team's receiving yards. Crazy numbers. It was a perfect system for Darnold, who regularly displayed his arm talent and springy movement skills. Kubiak is now the head coach of the Raiders and is doing some good things there, and Fleury has to step into his shoes. It's unreasonably lofty to draw those comparisons, but it's tough to be the guy who falls the whiz kid. When Kyle Shanahan left the Falcons in 2016, Steve Sarkisian came up from the college ranks to replace him, but he was back in college in 2 years. Matt Cavanaugh was promoted in Washington to replace Sean McVay, but Cavanaugh and head coach Gruden never worked out together, and John Morton didn't last a full season with Ben Johnson in Detroit. When a truly spectacular coaching talent leaves, the next guy almost always fails to reach the same bar. I believe Kubiak is that level of schemer, and I think the inescapable decline is awaiting Seattle under Fleury. Consider Smith and Jigba's receiving yardage share. It's absurdly impressive, but also unhealthy. A schemer must be so ridiculously on their game to continually funneling targets to one guy, no matter how talented he is and how many places he can line up. So this, to me, is the biggest question with the Seattle Seahawks. I think their defense is going to be extraordinary again. I think it's going to be a top 5 defense. I like their offensive line. I really do. I think they've got good pieces in terms of playmakers with Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think they're better than people think in terms of their receivers. Their special teams is criminally underrated. It's one of the best special teams in the NFL. Rashid Shaheed's a legitimate weapon, returning kicks and as a receiver as well. But to me, the offensive design, the scheming is going to be the biggest question for Seattle because that was such an advantage that they had 2 A-plus coordinators. Mike Macdonald, defense as the head coach, and of course Kubiak on offense as the play caller and coordinator and schemer there. That was such a massive advantage. One of the things I talked about, and regular longtime viewers know this, going back to the coaching hiring cycle, is you want to find head coaches that can give you a tactical advantage and strategic advantage on one side of the football. And ideally, then you hire a coordinator that gives you one on the other. But you need to have at least a guy that has one, right? That you need to have a coach on your team that gives you a massive advantage on one side of the football or the other. Ideally, two. The Seahawks had two very clear ones. McDonald, elite. Kubiak, elite. Right? The Detroit Lions, they had Ben Johnson, right? For example, what happened when he left, the issues as the report noticed. And there's other instances in history as the ESPN report highlighted as well. But that's a huge problem for Seattle. It's probably the biggest question mark to me when it comes to the Seahawks. Now, it could work out extremely well. Jackson Smith and Jigba could still be a superstar receiver, highly productive, could be schemed open a bunch. They create a good team environment behind him. They've added some good playmakers this offseason. Obviously spent some draft capital at running back and wide receiver. And listen, guys are going to get better. Gray Zabel, year 2, is a really good guard who's only going to improve. Sam Darnold, I think, obviously is a very stabilizing quarterback who's done some good things in his career. I don't expect that to, in terms of recently in his career, I should say, Minnesota than last year at Seattle. I don't expect that to change. Hopefully not too much. And of course, that defense is unbelievable, and that special teams group is very good. So I think the Seahawks are going to be a good team. But this is the biggest question mark. And if you're looking for an opening in the NFC, obviously the Rams are very good. But if you're a team that's not Los Angeles, if you're Detroit, if you're Philly, Green Bay, Chicago, even this, and you're trying to think, how do we get past Seattle, San Francisco? How do we get past the Seattle Seahawks? This could be the way where they no longer have such a massive tactical advantage on offense with Kubiak gone. But here's the problem. That means you have to have a tactical advantage on defense, and this is why I give the Bears a lot of credit for making wholesale personnel changes to make sure they had that. The Packers, they brought in Jonathan Gannon, former head coach of the Cardinals, defensive coordinator with the Eagles, sort of question mark there. A lot of people were not super high on the hire. We'll see how that works out for them. I look at the Lions. There's some questions about their defensive coordinator. The 49ers, of course, with Salo moving on, they've got a new DC as well, veteran guy. We'll see what happens there. So again, it comes down to, do you have a tactical advantage at one of these coordinator spots? And it looks like the Seattle Seahawks, this could be an attack factor if Fleury isn't up to the task, and a very challenging task at that. The question is for the other NFC contenders is, do they have now an advantage over Seattle? And there are some question marks there. So definitely something to keep an eye on there for sure. All right. Let's talk about this from Pro Football Talk. I thought this was pretty funny. Smaller shoulder pads are coming under closer scrutiny. Could football ever return to the days of Mike Allstott and his gigantic pads? Boy, I hope so, just because I think the aesthetic, as you can see by the picture there, is pretty awesome. But I do think the smaller pads thing is something I've never been a fan of. Like, there's some DBs now that will basically not wear any pads in their pants. There's a lot of that going on. And the logic in some ways makes sense, right? If you're in the middle of the interstate and a semi-truck's barreling at you, do you want to be as padded up as possible, or do you want to just be fast enough to get out of the way? Right. And I understand, so, obviously you want to be light and fast to get out of the way. That's pretty obvious. But I do think there are some issues with that. And I think one of the concerns, especially as now there's a 17th game, as there's been for a few years, international games, funky schedules, maybe even an 18th game at some point. You could make an argument that more focus on more padding is more important than in years past, just because wear and tear, right? Because maybe having less padding will allow you to avoid one collision. But if you just keep getting more and more collisions or more chances of collision, eventually you're going to get hit, and you need to be prepared for that. So this could be something to keep an eye on. Very interesting here. Again, this is where negotiations for this 18th game and things with the NFL Players Association could get kind of funky. This could be one of those under-the-radar negotiating pieces that the NFL players and the owners try and figure out a way to manage this better going forward. And listen, we've seen this with the helmets, with the Guardian caps and things like this. There's been a much greater emphasis on padding and things like that. And I will say this. This is just my perspective, and I'm curious what you guys think about this. I wonder if the NFL decided, listen, let's do fewer padded practices to minimize injuries, but maybe if we had better padding or went back to more traditional padding, we could do more padded practices and more practices in general, which I think would be better for injuries. So I wonder if there's a path where getting back to this kind of older school, just traditional football pads, as crazy as that sounds that we've gone away from that, is a way to actually reduce injuries. Because if you have fuller pads, better pads, like back in the day, full coverage, you can do more padded practices and more practices in general, which means you have players that practice football more, which means they're spending less time doing these crazy workouts and lifting weights and becoming just physical, like shredded freaks that are more susceptible to injuries because they're not in football shape. there's a way that if they can head down this path, long way to go, of course, it could actually do really, really positive things for the players. So I'm cautiously optimistic. Today, it's a Monday, so I'm pretty optimistic coming out of the weekend. I think this is a pretty cool thing and could be a good sign for player safety and health going forward. All right, let's talk about this from FTN on X. It's kind of interesting. Shedeur Sanders creating explosive plays and anticipation throws. Highest yards after catch per completion in the 2025 season. Shedeur Sanders led the way. 6'7". Aaron Rodgers, Jared Goff, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen were the other 4 in the top 5. So it's the classic, which of these is not like the other? You've got 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks and one who I would say is in the Hall of Very Good in Jared Goff. And then you got Shedeur Sanders. So the question is Sanders a breakout emerging star, or is it just one of those funky statistics? Definitely something to keep an eye on. So what would YAC, yards after catch per completion, entail? Well, it would entail accuracy, right? It means when you hit a receiver, you hit him in stride. Could it be a sign of really good offensive design? Yeah, potentially. A guy schemed open. But I think if you look at the Lions without Ben Johnson, they had issues. Aaron Rodgers' offensive coordinator situation last year wasn't great. Josh Allen, good offensive staff. Obviously, Mahomes, they changed their coordinator from Nagy to Bieniemy. So you can make an argument that's not really the big case here. So maybe this is a really good Shedeur Sanders statistic. Maybe he's a better player than some people realize. And listen, this is going to be something to, really watch because, Sanders, obviously, with, being who he is and who his family is going to have a lot of attention on him. There's a lot of debate about the quarterback position in Cleveland right now with Monken, the new head coach, in terms of what they do. Deshaun Watson, will Sanders start? All that kind of stuff. So definitely something to really keep an eye on here because, this one really jumped out to me. When you have a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, almost regardless of the statistic, if it's positive and you're better than Rodgers, Goff, Mahomes, and Allen, and number 1 in football, that's something to really raise the old eyebrows a little bit. So could be good news there for Cleveland sports fans. Lord knows they need it. All right, let's talk about this here. So ESPN did another piece talking about the best skill position groups in the National Football League: running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. And the Lions came in at number 1, and I could not agree with this more. And they've got a nice little write-up here, and I can go through it all. It talks about Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's great. Talks about Jahmyr Gibbs, who's great. Jameson Williams, who's great. Laporta being healthy would be big. Isaac Tesla doing some good things in his second year. All that's true. But to me, this is a Jahmyr Gibbs story. I am, I'm not a fan of the Lions, but I'm as fan of Jahmyr Gibbs as you can possibly imagine. I think he is this generation's Marshall Faulk in terms of his playmaking ability. He's a guy that can do it all, line up all over the place, slot, wide, motion, traditional tailback, offset, hand the football off to him, toss it to him, throw it to him. He can go 80 in a second. He's got incredible speed, but he's also very methodical. He can run with power, short yardage. He can hit you for 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, and 95. Right? Gibbs to me is such a weapon because you can come out in a personnel package where it's, okay, it looks like 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, and a running back. Okay, that's balanced, maybe lean towards run. And then you come out there and like, oh my goodness, it's 5 wide because Jahmyr Gibbs is lined up as a slot receiver. So you see that the balanced formation, you go more linebackers on the field. So you got a linebacker in space or maybe even a safety in space against Gibbs. You're done, right? He's going to win that easily as a wide receiving option. Or let's say you go light in the box because you're scared of that. Well, then they'll just run it down your throat. Again, this is what Jahmyr Gibbs provides. And there's a lot of people talking about what's the value of running back. And to me, Jahmyr Gibbs is what the modern NFL running back, the elite of the elite, should be. I'm not taking anything away from Derrick Henry. He's still phenomenal. Saquon Barkley's still great, right? There's a lot of good backs. But to me, Jahmyr Gibbs' value is unparalleled in the NFL from the running back position. He's if you had to ask me today, who's one of the best 5 football players in the NFL, regardless of the position, Jahmyr Gibbs is on that list. When you watch the film of him, guys, it is bonkers. When I saw Marshall Faulk, and I'm sure a lot of you guys watched Faulk play in the 90s and early 2000s with the Colts and later, of course, with the Greatest Show on Turf Rams, it was unbelievable what he did. In fact, Bill Belichick, famously before Super Bowl 36, said, we've got to make Faulk's life miserable because that's the only way to beat the Rams. We've got to hit him every single play. He is the guy to key on. Not Torrey Holt, not Kurt Warner, not Isaac Bruce, none of those guys. We have got to focus on, we're not even going to blitz Kurt Warner that much. We've got to focus on Marshall Faulk. That was his game plan, and it famously worked out incredibly well for the Patriots in Super Bowl 36. So I think Gibbs falls under that exact same bucket. And if the Lions can have a good enough defense and a healthy defense, if they can execute the offense with their new offensive coordinator, Petzig, everyone they brought into the fold, they can be good. Jahmyr Gibbs, however, if he's healthy and they use him correctly, they can be great. That to me is how just unbelievably talented and powerful Jahmyr Gibbs as an offensive weapon, how good he is. He is. I tell you, I run out of superlatives because when I watch Jahmyr Gibbs play, I just think he's just that special. All right, let's talk about this here from Ari Myrov. 49ers tight end George Kittle speaks out on NFL teams being willing to use grass for World Cup matches, but not for their own football players via the NFL Players Association. Kittle said, "We made it clear that we prefer grass fields. We know it's better on our bodies, and clearly we know it's possible based on everything that went into putting down grass fields for the World Cup in each stadium. At this point, it comes down to the NFL making it a priority and choosing to invest in us as players because our bodies are our business, which they get to capitalize on." So my message to George Kittle is, you're probably right. This is the wrong message. This is the wrong message, right? Because when it comes to like the framing there, like the first paragraph's fine. Right? Yeah, that's fine. We all get, yeah, it's very, very, very true. But the NFL, they need to invest in us as players because our bodies are our business. The NFL, here's where these players lose it, especially in these negotiations. The players, because of the salary cap structure, they get paid a ton of money by requirement, like in terms of percentage of revenues, not profits, revenues. So in a negotiation, and even if there was some legal case, which won't happen, but even if there was, they would just fall, in my opinion, they would just fail. Because the NFL owners, and this is true, they invest in the players heavily. And obviously we've got weight rooms, we got facilities and all that, but just in sheer dollars, millions and millions of dollars, and a percentage of revenues. There is not a business I'm aware of on planet Earth, certainly not America, where a company pays out by rule a percentage of their revenues, not profits, revenues, their sales to employees. That just doesn't happen. True revenue sharing of that level, I don't think happens in American business. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm open up to a fact check on that. And that's where this argument from the players, and Kittle's not the only one that has this argument. I'm not trying to pick on George Kittle here, but a lot of them have this, and you invest in us. Guys, they already are. That's not what your argument needs to be, right? That's not what your argument needs to be. The argument needs to be just that first paragraph, that it's doable, and it's something that can improve safety. Because that's the thing with safety regulations, right? Can it be done, right? You can't mitigate every single risk ever. You can't have a factory made of bubble wrap. So if an employee, a union wanted a factory made of bubble wrap, not going to happen, not doable. The other thing is, does it actually significantly improve safety? And that's all the NFL players should focus on. It's a safety issue. It's a workplace safety issue. You guys invest in us so much. You give us so much money. We're so grateful. We love it. But we just need to have a little bit safer workplace. That's all we're asking for. That's a strong argument. That's a good negotiation position. That's something the public can get behind. If you're an average person right now, and I'll pose this question for you guys. You know, if you're making 50K, 40K, 80K, 90K, whatever it may be, 100K, doesn't matter, but you're not making NFL money. You know, it's like, well, you need to invest in us. I tell you what, I hear this, I'm like, listen, George Kittle, you got a huge contract. They're giving you millions of dollars, not to mention endorsement opportunities because you play in the NFL. And a big platform to make more money off it, to build your brand in other businesses. They invest in you a lot. And that's not counting, you know, the incredible infrastructure, weight room, you know, dining hall, all that kind of cafeteria stuff, nutrition, all of that, right? They already invest in you a lot, right? Why do they need to invest more? That's where the argument falls on deaf ears, especially I think for a lot of ordinary folks. It's like, oh, so you want another thing, players? You already have it made? You want more? Come on, just play football. That's where they lose arguments, not just with turf, but with arguments like these in general. The best argument that the players can make is, it's a safety issue. We love you. The owners are great. We love everything you give us. Just a little bit more safety in the workplace. That is a strong argument. The moment they say things like this, they lose a lot of people. And I think it's one of the reasons why the NFL Players Association continues to fail in negotiations, because their arguments aren't framed the right way. All right, let's get into the comment section, guys. This first comment here is from Broski Bear. It doesn't make any sense to extend Bryce Young when he has 2 years left on his rookie deal. Bryce barely eclipsed 3,000 yards passing for the first time in his career, and it didn't happen until year 3. He's tiny and lacks arm talent. I'm seeing how he plays this season before giving him an extension. He still has a lot to prove. I don't disagree with all of that. Now, I do think he had a pretty good year. I think it wasn't an elite year, but I think he was pretty frisky. Made some plays, was very clutch. All that's very fair. Good mobility, right? All those things we had waited to see from Bryce Young. But my point when it comes to the quarterback position is more just high level. It's sort of a macro view where, do you have your guy? Yes. Okay, lock him down. Team-friendly deal, long-term deal, lock him down. If you don't have your guy, Go get him. Do whatever it takes to find him. Don't be half in, half out. Is Bryce Young your guy? Yes or no question. The Carolina Panthers should know this by now. Year 3, is he your guy? If the answer is no, okay, go find him. Go trade for picks. Go get multiple quarterbacks. Go take multiple bites at the apple. If he is your guy, lock him down. Right? I think it's one of those binary things in coaches and in organizations. If they don't feel like they're 100% sure, they kind of want to have half in, half out. But here's my point. If you're not 100% sure, I think that's a sign you don't have your guy. Stoneland75 says, I don't think Bryce Young is very good. I think if they extend him, it looks like a Tua contract type mistake. Just because the Broncos could overcome the huge salary cap hit for a quarterback who wasn't the guy doesn't mean it's a good plan. Ask Cleveland what it's like to eat Watson's numbers for years. Well, the problem with the Browns was, I agree with you, it's a fair point, but the contract was fully guaranteed and they gave up so much draft capital for Watson. That's what was so stupid about it. They didn't just sign him. They traded for him and gave him a huge, fully guaranteed contract to the point where there was no benefit at all, right? You can take, so a dead cap hit, right, is basically someone signed a massive amount of signing bonus, right, and guaranteed money. Russell Wilson's entire contract, for example, with the Broncos, was not fully guaranteed. So the dead cap hit was just the chunk that was part of his signing bonus prorated over the life of the deal and other guaranteed dollars associated with that. Because of the Brown situation, Watson fully guaranteed contract, there was no financial benefit cutting him or not, right? And because you traded away all the picks, it's not like you had a lot of flexibility to add more players. So they were stuck because it was a stupid deal. And I do think you can recover from contract mistakes. Seahawks have done it. The Broncos did it. The Dolphins are trying and doing it a good way. The Saints seem to be doing it, right? A lot of teams have been able to do it. So I think that's a better path to me personally than to just keeping 1 foot in, 1 foot out the door. So that's just my opinion, though. So obviously there's you're more than welcome to disagree with that. Super Fast Dog says, yet another banger. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. A couple things. That graph indicates the Chargers with a top 8 O-line will have us Bolts fans going crazy, considering the mess Herbert has had in front of him for his nearly entire career. Ortiz mentioned Derwin and Toll extensions during draft day interviews. Derwin already done. What do you see Tolley getting? I'm thinking that's a wait. I think the market exploded for edge rushers. I think if Tolley could probably agree to a team-friendly deal, but I think the market, excuse me, I think the market for edge rushers has just exploded. I mean, some of these deals are bonkers. Oweh getting $100 million, Jalen Phillips getting $120, right? Crazy numbers. And I would say Tolley's better than both of them. So what are the Chargers going to give up? I don't think they're going to do that big a deal, but we'll see. I could be wrong. There's only one Iceman, and that's George Gervin. Yeah, that's fair, obviously. Finger roll. You remember that? Keep up the great work. Best NFL content on YouTube and X. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Snail Champion 511 says, thanks for the daily content and giving the Texans a voice when the national media never will. One thing I wanted to speak up on was about the CJ Stroud. I think I've held up my bargain up quote. As one would expect, aggregators keep taking the full meaning of what he said out of context to make it seem like he's being entitled or something. Those of us diehard Texans fans who actually watched the press conference where he said it, as well as other media appearances, would know that Stroud has done nothing but been a good teammate and loyal soldier to the Texans organization. The actual context of the bargain quote was him talking about his relationship with his agent. He was basically saying he's letting his agent handle the contract business while he's focusing on his end of the bargain, aka playing football and being there for the team. But I guess the catchy headlines will always gravitate towards drama and disputes. Go figure. Yeah, I mean, that is a huge problem, and I can fall victim to it too. Right, I think we all do in certain levels, and I try my best to avoid it. And by the way, if I get something wrong, if I fall victim to the catchy headline thing, please correct me in the comment section below. I want to be corrected because I don't want to do that, but I think we all can. CJ Stroud, by all accounts, is an A+ dude on and off the field. Right, there is no reporting whatsoever that I can find that indicates CJ Stroud isn't the true definition of what you want from a franchise quarterback. He checks all the boxes: hard worker, great teammate, good dude on and off the field by all accounts, and that was the way at Ohio State too. So anyone saying that he's sort of a selfish guy, you're flat out wrong based on everything we know publicly about CJ Stroud. In terms of the holding up my end of the bargain with the agent, yeah, I mean, a lot of people, what they do is they'll take a quote and they'll cut it and they'll make that the story. And that's one of the problems. And by the way, that's not a new thing, right? That's been going on for media, at least for my entire life, and probably before that, and probably for the history of media and news and things like that. So it's just the way it is. I think one of the things that is a big tell is that there's no drama with the Texans, right? All the drama with Houston is external. And I think that's a sign of a buttoned up, well-run organization when a lot of the drama and debate is on people like on ESPN, Fox Sports, or even what we're talking about now. It's the Texans themselves. There's no drama there. It's a very cleaned up, buttoned up organization. And I think that's one of the things, one of the reasons why I'm very high on the Houston Texans this year to be a top contender. Buttoned up organizations win championships, right? The one exception was the Philadelphia Eagles in 2024. And I think that roster was just stacked. I mean, best offensive line in football, 2 stud receivers, offensive player of the year running back, 2,000-yard rushing leader, best defensive coordinator in the game at Vic Fangio, one of it, top 5 defense, right? Great special teams, veteran quarterback who can run and throw. Like the team was just stacked, right? And you can make an argument the Eagles were buttoned up from a front office perspective, just coaching had some volatility from Sirianni. Other than that, like organizations that win titles, Rams buttoned up, Chiefs buttoned up, Seahawks buttoned up, Patriots buttoned up, right? That's what it is to win. You got to have a well-run, buttoned-up organization. And if you look at the Texans, there is no drama internally that I can find anyway when it comes to Stroud or frankly anything else. It's all external, which to me means it's a big nothing burger. But all right, guys, that's the comments for today, and that is the show for today. Listen, Tom Brady attacking the NFL leadership, I think that is new and much needed, because if that can become the tip of the spear to enact some much needed change, I am here for that 100%. We're seeing some interesting updates when it comes to coaching opportunities across the NFL. Mike McCarthy in a great spot. Seahawks' new offensive coordinator has some big shoes to fill. And as we work our way closer and closer to training camp, I think we'll start to see more and more strategies come into fruition to what teams are specifically trying to do. And we'll take a deep look into that and so much more as we get closer to training camp, starting, of course, tomorrow morning with our next show. But until then, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection.